This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice. Your voice. This is the voice of freedom. We will not hide from the truth. We will ask the hard questions until we are sure we have the truth. Welcome to the voice of freedom, where your voice will never be silenced. Good evening. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you along, and thanks to everybody who's logging in to see us tonight. Let's see how long we go before we have too many interruptions. Of course, it's Truth Tuesday, and when you want nothing but the truth, there is really only one man to deliver it. Riccardo, Bosi, good evening, and once again, sir, thank you for your service. Thank you for coming and joining us on your Tuesday night.
Thanks, Carl. Top of the evening to you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, very, very decent. How's your week been?
Busy but quiet. It's been at home. The bride is getting over her issues. We got some lovely flowers from some supporters, so thank you very much for that. A shout out to those kind people that sent flowers to Rhiannon. But we've been busy writing. We're still doing the follow up from the election, but mainly my week's been writing what I'm calling the Law of War series, a 10-part series, which explains the end state of what A1 is all about, and then the philosophy, the concepts, and then an outline of sort of our policy approach. Doesn't actually go into the detailed policy as such, but it's an interesting exercise. But good.
So I've had a lot of contact this week. People still seem to be hung up on this whole party idea. I said I'd kick off the question with, and I apologise because I have done this. I've probably introduced you at some stage, at least once, as the leader of the Australia One Party. And I think other mainstream media organisations may have done the same thing. And other, part-time play around plastics like me have probably used the term as well. And now people are expecting something of the word party. I don't think you have ever come out and said you're the leader of a party, except maybe recently when we've been talking how A1 is now progressing toward a party. So for once and for all, can you please, for the 300 emails I've received on it this week, can you please tell these people how the party system works? Because it doesn't apparently sink in when I tell them that parties are illegal under the Constitution anyway. So
yeah, no, this won't be the first or last time we'll do this, mate. But that's okay. Let me see if I can pour oil on troubled waters here. First of all, we've opened up for formal membership. Now, to register as a political party, you need 1,500 members. Not a problem. Now, we've finally opened up for membership. Our systems, our systems are set up and running now. The security is excellent. It's military-grade security, which is fantastic. That protects the details of all our people. Now, so we're open for membership. Pay your dues, get in, read you can read the Constitution, you can read the policy outline. If you like it, then sign up and away you go. You're now a formal member. So up to this point, we've just been had supporters. Now we are a registered entity, so we're registered with ASIC. We're a registered entity. So if anybody's worried about tracking who's in charge and are there any checks and balances and do we conduct regular audits? Of course we do. We're a professional registered entity with ASIC. And so we're making sure we're doing everything by the book. So we've opened up for membership finally, after a very long pregnant pause.
yeah.
And once we get to 1,500, then we formally apply to the AEC for party status. So everyone clear on that? We're all good. Fantastic. Now, having said that, as Carl said, parties are actually illegal under the Constitution. Just because we have it doesn't mean it's legal. And this is, if people can't get their head around the fact that governments do illegal stuff, as simple as that, man, oh man, are they in for a few very deep rabbit holes over the next few months.
Oh,
But okay,
yeah.
let's try it out. Let's try it out. The
This-
Constitution actually says you must direct the elector, that's you, don't call yourself a voter, call yourself an elector. The elector must directly elect their representative. Now, when you put a party in there, it has interposed itself between the elector and the representative, which is unconstitutional. But I understand it. It's, for ease, we've had political parties. And this is what the American founding fathers warned about 270 plus years ago, 250 years ago, rather.
Yep.
That what they called faction. People would band together in factions and distort the electoral integrity of the process, and that's what parties are. And that's why our founding fathers made sure that that clause was in the Constitution, that they must directly elect their representatives, because they knew the danger. Well, they got ignored, and away they go, and now they have parties. And so,
Yeah.
yes, we will be a party, but here's the big difference. Here's the big difference. Because we're going to put other checks and balances into the Electoral Act when we get into power, and we will, much to the chagrin of all the prostitutes out there that want to see us disappear,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
the electors
Yes.
will have the capacity to remove their representatives. So what that means is, in a real practical sense, with this recall election system, if the representative lets his or her electorate down, fails to keep promises, etc., then they can be sacked by the electors, not the
Yep.
party. And so the party exists. Australia One Party will exist as a party. It vets people, it prepares them, it trains them, it gives them a set of policy positions with which they agree. That's the basis on which we take people on board. They've got to agree to our policies. And if you don't like them, go somewhere else. That's absolutely fine. But
Yep.
then we set them free, and they are genuine independents. So yes, they come from A1. Yes, they are members of the A1 organisation, but we do not control them, and we're putting processes in place so we cannot control them. They are genuine independents. And anyone doesn't believe me, that's fine. Just ask any of the 9 other candidates that ran at the last election as independents, but as supporters of A1, and they'll tell you
Yep.
exactly the level of support we gave them and what constraints, if any, we placed on them. The short answer was no, no constraints. You are an independent, and if you cock up, your electors will sack you, and so will we after you betray the organisation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
look, we're open for membership. Sign up, go to the website, and we'll be applying. So the name party will be accurate, but just so everyone's clear. And this is actually, you raise a good point, because there are a lot of excuse me, there are a lot of organisations out there asking for money from people. And there are no checks and balances. There is no audit process. There is no appointed treasurer. There is no executive. There is no ASIC registration. Like, who the hell are these people? Where is the
Yep.
money going? Is there a process? Is there a trail? Who's going to answer the phone? Who runs the show? Is there an executive? Are there minutes? Are there all the simple stuff that you need to do to run an organization? We do it. We've got it. And the
Yeah.
members will be able to, check that and verify that. And we'll have our annual conferences, and they get to read the books and see where every cent has gone. And
Okay.
but I got to tell you, be careful, folks. A lot of good-looking organisations, which I'd be very leery of.
That actually leads me to one of the questions now. I've been haunted by this bloke for a week. He's been trying to get me to make sure that I ask you at least one question. So that certainly leads into what you're talking about. How about wants to know where he can find a register of where donations have been spent?
Well, once he's a member and he's signed up, and we've vetted him to make sure he's not Masonic filth, and the rest of the checks, and are working with children's because he might be a pedophile. See, once you've
Yep.
done that, you get to see that as a member of the organisation.
Yep.
Absolutely no problem. But understand this, folks. This is it's all recorded. It's all audited. But we're not there for blow-ins who are looking for trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get a life, mate.
Yeah.
Seriously, get a life.
Yeah. True. And I mean, he's been on this for a week, and he was in the box at 6 tonight. An hour and 10 minutes early to make sure his was the first questions up there. So. You mentioned the Mason filth. I've got a question here from Kaz sent through in the email. Did Masons start off being the scum that they are, or did they start as an honourable organisation which descended into the sewer?
I think the latter. I think it was if you go back far enough, you'll get different stories at different points in history. But it was basically a guild system where professions would band together to mutually support each other. My
Yep.
understanding is, and look, I could be wrong on this, but the Illuminati penetrated the filth back in the Masons back in 18. Don't quote me on the year. Second half of the 18th century, they penetrated and started turning it around, because a lot of people were Masons. You couldn't get anywhere unless you were a Mason way back when. But it grew up from just craft guilds over time, literally stonemasons and the rest of them. And then it became a means by which powerful people could control, first of all, areas of industry, then areas of land, and then nations, and away you go.
Yep. Yep. Jim sent a question through by email too. He wants to know if he could hear your thoughts regarding utilising the Gandhi model, which, for those people who may not be aware, the Gandhi model is withdrawing your labour during the week, and on the weekend you go protesting. So during the week you stay at home, and on the weekend you go protesting. What are your thoughts on the Gandhi model?
I mentioned that, I guess, 18 months ago at one of the Sydney rallies, 200,000 people. I said, the moment we stop work, we hit them where it hurts in their checkbook. This is over. But so, yeah, I said that 18 months ago, I guess, 18 months, 12 months, 18 months ago. That's exactly what I said. Non-violent, non-cooperation, non-compliance. Just put your down tools, don't turn up to work. But you put out the call, it wasn't taken. That's their right to accept or deny. But yeah, I got no problem with that at all. That's what we've been trying to do for some time.
There are many common law, constitutional law groups floating around at the moment. There is a solution proposed regarding registration and licensing in this country, and there were some thoughts of some sort of mass action in that regard. What sort of level do you think we need to attain mass action-wise to have any kind of hope of winning the action, being successful in that action, and being able to make change going forward?
It's got to hit them where it hurts. It really does. And it has to be immediate, and it has to involve private enterprise as well as government.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't stop that, then it's going nowhere. And that's the problem. There is no shortage of information about what's going wrong out there. There's no shortage of ideas that would help bring it to a standstill. The single biggest impediment to achieving any meaningful critical mass, let's say, of the people is the fact that the media won't report it. I don't know how many times I can watch another 5-minute video explaining how the PCR test by Dr. Kerry Mullis was never designed to diagnose this sort of illness. How many more videos by Dr. Robert Malone do we have to watch to say that the mRNA vaccine process should never be used? How many more videos? Fill in the blank.
Yeah.
There is no shortage of information. But the problem is the media. And so, there's any number of really good potential solutions. We tried Canberra, and Canberra went well. In terms of waking up a lot of people, at least highlighting it for a while, and the world probably paid more attention than Australia did, believe it or not. We're getting a lot of international recognition for what we did in Canberra over that 3-month period. Excuse me. But again, the Masonic filth-controlled media won't let any of this out because they know this is a winner-takes-all war. There's no second prize. The bell won't ring after the 15th round and we shake hands and go home. One group will live, the other will die, and I know which it's going to be.
Yeah, me too. River Table then says, when are we going back to Canberra? So I would expect that Canberra isn't going to be a hotbed of any kind of anything during the winter. I don't think Parliament even sits during the winter, does it?
No, they're busy at the moment. But even if they were sitting, no, the timing is wrong. We've got other things to do now. And
I know that we've got some hardcore. I know that tonight we're joined by some pretty hardcore members of the Canberra crew who've been there, staunchly from day one. They are holding the line, and I do remember the speech you made about holding the line, and there are many different lines. Ours was to hold the line in Canberra. Why is it not as important to hold that line now?
Because we don't have enough people. It's as simple as that. 6 people standing on a hill isn't going to do it anymore. When we first turned up and we had hundreds of thousands of people there, it made it, it worked and we did well. You got to understand that life and war is a game of push and pull.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. And, to be honest, we've put in a lot in that 3 and a bit months. And now as the head of Australia One, we've got a lot of work to do. We're building this arc to move us from where we are to where we need to be.
Yeah,
we really do. So my attention, and look, if hundreds of thousands of people want to turn up to Canberra, go for it. You don't need me. And that's the whole point of A1. You have the power to do what you need to do.
Yes, that seems to be
everybody listening. Look in the mirror. and that's the one person you can trust to turn up when you want them to turn up. Seriously, you don't
Yeah.
need me. You don't need A1.
Yep. Yep.
Now, if we had a triggering event, something so egregious that it captured the imagination of the Australian people, we might say, absolutely, let's do it. Next weekend, we're going back to Canberra. But
Yep.
right now, we tried to get a hold of it. We tried to make it work. It didn't work. This is life. This is war. Not every shot gets a
And
kill.
and people have been involved in the war, whether they realise it or not, particularly in the Northern Rivers part of New South Wales. I mean, people's houses have been washed away, their livelihoods are gone, their life is in tatters. These were people who were transiting a lot of weekends, if not every weekend, down to Canberra. In many cases. That has happened for people all the way through Queensland, from far north Queensland to the border, from the coast to the outback. They've made it very difficult for people to travel large distances to get to Canberra, and I think Canberra is probably positioned where it is just for that very reason. I mean, it's in the butthole of nowhere, and you've got to really want to go to Canberra, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep, not much of a fun place to go either. I've spent 8 months there once, and so much fun. I've got a question here came in by email from Russ Clifton. Now, Russ wants to know about AHPRA. AHPRA, of course, for people who may not be aware or can't think of the name or what it's for, AHPRA is the organisation that has dictated what our medical staff can and can't do regarding the jibby jab. So they are responsible for licensing doctors and nurses in this country and are responsible for delicensing them if they don't go along with the AHPRA recommendations. What would A1 do if, all things had been wonderful at the last election, Riccardo? How would you handle AHPRA?
There'd be an inquiry immediately into their behaviour because they cease to be a regulatory body for medical professionals and become a political tool. I mean, not even party political or partisan. It's actually worse than that. It has strayed from its remit, which is to ensure that only registered professionals adhere to a set of a code of practice and behaviour. And now it's something beyond that. And this goes back to, what was her name? A female doctor, everyone's favourite lesbian doctor. I can't remember her name. Karen
Me.
Thorpe. She became the
Oh,
member
yeah.
for, yeah. And that was the beginning of the end of any sort of, in my opinion, arm's length professional tracking of the medical profession. And it's become, in my opinion, it's now become just a tool for political objectives. And I don't mean Labor liberal political objectives. I mean worse than that. It really has. And we interviewed. In fact, he was a schoolmate of my brother, a doctor, and he was deregistered for nonsense. And yet, the funny thing that APRA never talks about is the number of deaths that happen in hospitals at the hand of incompetent doctors. Have you ever seen the numbers on that? Oh, bet you haven't. Bet you haven't. One of the leading causes of death around the world, in the Western world, is errors in hospitals. Now, if you don't believe me, check it out for
Yeah.
yourself, folks. Yeah, APRA can't find that. It's a bit like the federal police. They can't find pedophiles or drug dealers or corrupt politicians or spies, but by
Yep.
Christ, they can arrest protesters coming to Canberra. Well, APRA's the same. They can't find any doctors killing people because they're insane. They have no problem with the psychiatric profession, which is run by complete loons. No, none of that. So what would A1 would have done? It's part of a whole plan of inquiries which will be conducted immediately to find out who's up who and who's paying the rent, to use
Yep.
the Australian vernacular. And a lot of people are going to spend a lot of time in jail. And I don't know
Yes.
the prostitutes out there, the prostitutes out there. And mate, you're closer to the industry than I am. I'd love to know: are they really this stupid? Can't they read? I mean, I'm a simple soldier, right? But I can read. Are really that stupid, or are they corrupt? I mean, what the hell is going on with these guys that they
Well,
cannot, for a second, even just stop and say, "Oh, hang on, let me look into this. Does the vaccine give AIDS? Oh shit, the CDC said it does." I mean,
okay.
seriously,
Can I
I beggars belief.
be aware that there was an article written I assume it's in the Courier Mail in Queensland. And I actually have a copy of the article here I can bring up and show you folks. So let me just stop my camera for a minute. Now, this was written by a guy called Max Futcher, who is the Channel 7 newsreader for Queensland. And in this article, he makes some outrageous statements that are blatantly untrue, particularly regarding certain additives to the jibby jab. And uh, as you said, Riccardo, these fly directly in the face of information provided by those agencies responsible for that in the USA and here in Australia, for that matter. How is it? I mean, this guy must be an idiot, as you say. Or is there something else we're missing? Could this be something different, Riccardo?
I don't know. I mean, I genuinely wonder. I'm trying to figure out, is he part of the Masonic filth and he's just doing what he's told? I mean, the article's written in such an amateurish fashion. I can't believe this guy's. I mean, he's obviously, he's worked his way up the greasy pole in media, so he's not necessarily
Good
the
on
guy I
that.
want to have around for dinner. But it's it beggars belief. I don't understand it, mate. Honestly, I'm trying to figure out whether was it worth it, mate? Was it worth taking the? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just read? Why don't
Yeah.
you just read? That's all.
So, Riccardo, how much are the bankers responsible for the evil?
Oh, huge amounts, because they're the ones that facilitate. They're not. They're a bit like communism. They facilitate the evil intent of those above them.
Yeah.
They're a major part of the problem. Major part. And I got told early in the piece, look, don't hit the bankers. Hit the bankers last. That's the smart play. Well, sometimes the smart play is not the right play. Does that make sense? And we know the
Yeah.
bankers
Yeah.
are. We're accustomed to bowing to them and have been for decades and centuries. Even in the US, where they had a couple of presidents that tried to rein in the private banks who were controlling the money supply in the US, and they came a cropper quite badly. We know
Yeah.
that they are key to the method of control of the planet. You control the money supply, you control the planet.
Yeah. And we've been conditioned around that money. That's their largest control feature on us, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely.
I have a question here from a concerned Victorian who asked me actually not to identify them, so I shan't. As a loyal A1 supporter, though, uh, coming to us to try and get some clarity on Nasara Jasara, which leads in back onto what you were just saying. Victoria is still full of mandates after 8 months. 8 months of income gone from them, and they'll never get it back. And still, a lot of these people haven't submitted. But while toughing it out has been possible till now, right now they're at breaking point or implosion point, as it's been put here, and quite seriously, a lot of them are now facing losing their homes. So while there is an understanding of the words Nasara Jasara, and a lot more people are now aware of those words as a worldwide movement, it isn't ready to be rolled out everywhere just yet. This person is asking, is there any way for the loyal ones to get some indication whether or not it's actually true or real or not, and if the rollout is bullshit?
On this matter, I am like the rest of you. I read as much as I can. I've yet to find anybody who can explain in good detail exactly how it will work. And so I'm sorry I can't help you on it. I really can't. I wish I could. All I can say is that we have a very different plan. We want to make sure we control our money and our economy, but that doesn't help people now who are, sort of a month or two away from losing their homes.
Yes,
This is
yeah.
this is just so you're aware. This was their plan. You losing your home is exactly what they're after. They had to break us morally. They had to break us economically. They had to break the nation economically. They had to break the people financially. They had to break the family unit. They had to break the cultural bonds that bound us together as a people. And they've done a sterling job. And we are
Right.
we're a bee's dick away from their end. And so this is exactly what they wanted. The next step, as you've probably heard, is you won't be able to go to Coles or Woolies because there's nothing in the aisles. This is what they've been doing. They've been destroying food production plants in the United States. They're destroying tons and tons of food in Australia. I don't know if you saw the story some weeks ago about the avocados that were being plowed into the ground just to keep the prices up. This was their plan. And I'm sorry, back to Nasara Gassara, I can't give you any more detail. The little I've heard, if it works, fantastic. Now, we've got one or two futures ahead of us. There's nothing going on, and we're fools, and the mainstream media are correct, and we're just tinfoil hat wearing loons, and we're all going to be, own nothing and be happy.
Oop.
Or, hello, you there? Or there is a safety net there is a safety net that's being set up by those who are taking big steps. We're taking small steps, big steps to recover the planet, and that safety net is this Nasara Gassara. The detail of which I can't help you with. I'm sorry. I wish I could. All I can do is look after yourselves.
Blue Sapphire wants to know, where is the front line?
Between your ears. And I mean that, and that's not a throwaway line.
Never a word spoken.
Once you've crossed that line, you are at war. Once your mind is set, you're at war, and you must do everything you can do. That's what we're doing at home. My wife and I, and my son. The two girls are too young, although they're learning some pretty useful lessons about how to treat politicians. It's between your ears.
Yeah.
You've got to decide for yourself. Do the best you can where you are with what you've got. That's the front line.
We're being hammered pretty hard at the moment, I think, with interference. I don't know if I'm dropping out at your end, but you're certainly dropping out at mine a little bit. I'll press on regardless. In your part of the world, I don't know whether or not you get the opportunity to look up and see much sky. But there we go. We look like we're coming back. I've been getting a lot of reports from people down in southern New South Wales, sort of south of Sydney over the last few days, that there's been a lot of chemtrails being seen in the sky again. And there's a lot of questions coming to me about chemtrails. I think you touched on it last week, that there is if you like, a chemtrail war going on above us at the moment. Both white and black hats have access to them. But I did hear that the white hats now are more predominantly in the skies spraying stuff. Is there any truth to that sort of stuff?
I've not heard that specifically. We did talk about the weather war that's going on. It's just two sides against each other. No chemtrails where I am, and we're northwest Sydney. We're in the outer west, up north slightly. Clear blue skies here. Although what I have noticed is, because we're just down the road, well, not down the road, but on the flight path, say, to Richmond Air Force Base. And there were a lot of flights. There have been many flights for several months now at odd hours, odd aircraft at odd hours, let's just say. But in the last couple of weeks, very quiet, very quiet. We had C-17 flying over and doing loops and things like that around the house. Tracking in from Central Australia, doing a U-turn over Sydney, then heading straight back out again. Odd behaviours, but nothing. Certainly no chemtrails, and a reduction in what seemed to be odd military aircraft movements.
Getting some whispers out of Darwin that they're seeing an awful lot of military people on the streets up there. I'm not aware of any major exercise that's happening up there at the moment. Have you heard anything about that?
Oh, it depends on the uniform. It's either good news or bad news, depending on the accent and the uniform, Carl.
Very true. Very true. Kanga wants to know, is our constitution suspended with a state of emergency?
Not to my knowledge. It doesn't exist that way. The constitution's a constitution.
Yeah, I didn't think.
You can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. You're better on the Constitution, Carl, but I can't recall any section of the Constitution that suspends it like others do for states of emergency.
No, I don't believe that it would be suspended in a state of emergency. Question without notice, because I've just popped into my head. We keep hearing stories that there is a second Governor General, or at least someone at least equal to the Governor General, um, but more senior too, floating around the country. Now, you've spent a lot of time in Canberra. What have you heard?
Yeah, I've heard the same. But once again, it's oh my God, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this. It's such nonsense. Whether it's true or not, it's such nonsense because we have no law in this country. There is no law. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how more clearly I can say it. We have had unlawful, unconstitutional people sitting in Canberra passing what they call laws but have no basis in reality for decades. And
Yeah.
so, and I suppose this leads in an indirect way to a point. In working out what our future will be, there are a lot of people who have different start points. The common law people, depending on which group you speak to, they have a start point. You have people who want to go back to the 1991 Constitution. You have people that want to go back to 73 when the Great Seal was removed. You can go back, and everyone's picking an arbitrary point, and that's I understand why, because we need a start point in order to figure out where we're going to move forward. What do we agree upon? What is the point? And I've
So
decided,
to that end, well, sorry, beg your pardon. Keep going.
no, sir, to my mind, what's critical is our end state, because these are multiple questions, like the Aboriginals, for example, the original the First Nations people have a view, and they've been told, one group was told they were given King Charles' sword by Queen Elizabeth II, handing back full rights to the land to them. Now that may or may not be true. Magna Carta, Section 61, may or may not be relevant. The 91 Constitution might be critical. These are all, and it's. I don't know if you remember that scene in Braveheart, where all the nobles are waving their parchments around, saying, "I have right, I have right," and they're all demanding to be heard because they have the right to succession of the crown. And
Yep.
Wallace walked out and says, "We had a water fight, folks," and he walked straight out. That's what it's like. So my view is
Yep.
this, and this is a personal view. It's not an A1 view, it's a personal view. I like that opening line in the American Declaration of Independence where they make it very clear they are dissolving the bands that once held these peoples together. They are just walking away. And as I've said before, at no point did I consent to being part of a corporation. At no point did I consent to any of this nonsense. So when people write to me, and I got some documents the other day from a group that indicated that I was sort of, what's it, misprision of treason or something or other. And they
Yes.
have it over me as well, and all this other stuff. And I don't know how clearly I can say it. You can all go to hell. I stand under no man or no woman, because at no point was I asked, did I give consent of any nature? So I don't care if my name's on a birth certificate under marriage. Don't care.
Yep.
I'm walking away. You can all jump in the lake. My view is this: we can try to untangle this Gordian knot, and we will never achieve step one. Or we can step forward and say, right, our end state is, and this is A1's end state, I can tell you that. It's one country, one people, one flag. Now, just on that, let me just shock you a little bit. I know we're drifting, but this is really important because everyone has a little view. And forgive me while my hand taps away on
All
the
right.
screen. I just want to bring something up which will just give you an example about how each of these separate questions are all the same questions asked by different people. I'm going to find out, see if they've still got it up. The original sovereign tribal federation and their declaration. Now, there's a lot of goodwill towards the original, to the original people in Australia and what they deserve and don't deserve. Now, I've got to try to find. I've got to try to find their declaration, because the declaration, and I warned them of this. Just be aware. I warned them of it because some of you will remember that I was working closely with David Cole.
Yes. Yes.
And I like David. I trust David as a man, as an individual. But you got to be wary of all the people that are claiming to represent, the First Nations people, because as many tribes, there are as many supporters.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
this document, it's called the Declaration of the Self-Determination Nationhood of the Autonomous Original Tribal Peoples of Terra Australis. Oh, and I suggest people look it up. And I just want to find a couple of lines that'll send shivers down the spine of just about every Australian. And basically, I can't find it now. I should have prepared earlier. Apologies.
That's all right.
But what it basically says is that they want their own nation. They want their own currency. They want their own diplomacy. They want to fracture Australia into countless small separate nations. Now, guess who's behind the OSTF? The United Nations. And the United Nations have been pushing this group for some time. I wouldn't trust these people as far as I could throw Ayers Rock. And they want us to pay them massive compensation, and they've not, and it's quite insulting to all the good people of Australia. And now get the number here, folks, who have been paying them $33 billion a year every year since forever, and yet we're supposed to sit there and take responsibility for something we've never done to them. And just give us a second if I can find one of their own words.
Yeah, sure. I'm just having a bit of a stroll through a lot of the messages coming through tonight. Thank you
Here
to
we go.
everybody.
We have the right to maintain and strengthen our distinct political, legal, economic, social, cultural institutions while retaining our right to fully participate, if we so choose, in the political, economic, and cultural life of the UN member state of Australia. So they're either going to be part of Australia or not, depending whether they want to or not. This is going to fracture the country. Plus, they want billions of dollars of compensation. I can't find it for you, but we might talk about it next week. But if you want to, folks, have a look at the original Sovereign Tribal Federation Declaration. Yeah, I've lost you now, Carl. Where are you?
Oh,
and you'll see that the point I'm making, I guess, is that whether it's the common law people or wherever our future lies, there are a million people out there trying they have their own little issue to focus on. And if we try to cobble together this mess, we will get nowhere anytime soon. I can tell you the UN, they're up to their neck in this. They can't wait. Where are you, mate? I've lost you.
I'm here. I'm still. Well, I hope I'm still moving. I'm looking at another screen, so I can see myself still moving around. And
there we are. I've got you now. Okay. So right. But anyway, the point is this. Beautiful. The point, ladies and gentlemen, go have a look at the OSTF declaration, read it, and make sure you try to stay calm, because this organisation, and I've warned David about it. And I like David Cole, and I trust David Cole, but these people want to fracture Australia into 1,000,000 pieces. Now, good luck to them. They can do that. They can make that move if they wish to, but they've got 25 million Australians to persuade that they somehow they can lord it over us in a constitutional, legal, economic, diplomatic sense. The world has moved on. We must all give something away. All of us must give something away. The blacks, the whites, the common laws, the red flags, the blue flags, all of this great mess. If we try to cobble together this mess, we're going to end up worse than South Africa.
I agree.
We really are. And so whenever these questions come up, it's always the same for me. One country, one people, one flag. That's the end state. We can start wherever we want to start, and how we navigate our way there is up for discussion. I get that. But unless we are heading to one country, one people, one flag, and I mean that, you won't find me at that table. You won't find me there.
There's a lot of talk about sovereignty at the moment, and certainly there's a lot of people running down the path. Jennifer here is offering to debate anybody and all comers on sovereignty by the look of it. And that's probably a debate you'll get taken up on here, Jennifer. So if you do want to send me an email, please do. Voice of Freedom.
Before we go, just on that, because there are stories that I remember when I was a kid, the blacks were 40,000, then it was 50, 60, 70, 80,000 years. Well, what about the tribes that they killed before they took over? Isn't their land their land? There are errors of law and logic in this. It was the law of conquest. That was the law of the day. Got it. I'm not saying it's nice. That's the law of the day. The current crop of blacks killed the previous crop of blacks and took over. Well done. Now, we can keep going back in time to Adam and Eve if you want to. but listen, folks,
eventually we draw a line and start working together, don't we? That's the thing that And that's what A1 is all about, getting people in every community to stand up, because we all have the same goals. We all have the same desires for our country to come together, to work as one. A lot of people this week have contacted me as we started off the session tonight, uh, asking about party. So, with near enough to 1,400 people watching us at the moment, the message is join the party. If you didn't have someone standing in your electorate this past election, then be the person in your electorate next election. And join now, if you feel comfortable, a party. But follow Riccardo's direction as to how you join A1. And look, it doesn't have to be A1. Go and join another independent type party. But for those folks who have these sorts of ideals, A1 is obviously going to be running. And Riccardo, we've discussed before that A1 will step into the state sphere of politics as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're already working down in Victoria. We've got a Victoria state election coming up. Craig Cole, the Victorian State Cohort, is working his tail off down there, finishing off. He was a candidate for the federal election, which was fantastic training for everybody. And I can tell you, A1 is even more energized than we were before the election, because now we've got a bunch of people who have actually participated for the first time in an election. And they're quite energized, and they're becoming quite unruly. I'm getting emails saying we should do this and we should do that, and you got that wrong. This is perfect. This is how it should be.
Yep.
This should be energized people with a lot of good ideas saying, I disagree, we need to go that way. A month ago before the election, nobody knew Jack. And for those of you who aren't sure, that's half a word. But the fact is, this is the process of people getting involved. Now, as Carl said, if you don't like A1, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. We've got to say, get involved, stand as an independent, join a party if you want to, whatever you want to do. But understand this. The moment we start getting involved, the moment this country becomes difficult to govern, we're on the right track, because nobody's going to want to be a politician in the future, because you're going to have very informed, very cranky people that'll be demanding a lot from you. And I can tell you, it'll be the least desired job in Australia, I can promise you, which is a good thing.
Well, that sort of leads me into the question, and we may have covered this before, I think, but I think it's useful now that the audience has grown a little bit. We'll have another crack at it. So let's assume that we have been able to elect a parliament of independents. Now, the independent in Wagga has a roads issue, and they've got major highways that have got to carry grain trucks to and from shipping places, railway yards, all that kind of thing, roads being torn up. The hospital needs a bit of an upgrade, and the local swimming pool has sprung a leak.
And the 5 o'clock wave doesn't hit the river anymore.
Yeah. So how do you put that up against a Sydney electorate that, needs a new squash centre, or a hospital needs upgrading in Sydney, or the contra argument? And how do you balance that between small regional country towns versus provincial cities, and then our metropolitan areas? And I put a fourth group in there, the Gold Coast, if you like, that sort of size city, the Sunshine Coast chasing it, places like Toowoomba, which are growing and growing and growing. I think that Toowoomba's now close to 150,000 people in. I think it's the second largest inland city in Australia. So how does a parliament like that come to terms with everything that has to be looked after? How does the local representative get the local pool fixed and the road fixed when the local member for or the members for Southeast Queensland need a whole new railway system put in before the Olympics in 2032?
It's like
how do you make those decisions?
It's like it's done now. Look, a Parliament of Independence still has to provide the Governor General under the current system the capacity to guarantee a majority, a working majority. That's the tick that the leader of this mob has to get in order to get the Governor General say so. So what there has to be the same discipline that there currently is within the party. And let's say we get 77 A1 independents into Parliament. One of them is going to be the Speaker, leaves us 76, and we've got the majority. And so we apply discipline to that group because we have the same set of policies. We also have the same priorities. And so we can sit there as just like a party does and say, right, here are the priorities. We've already discussed these, away we go. So,
Yeah.
and if things change, things change. So that discipline is still there. The difference is you've got the members who are now fighting for their electorate more than they are for the party. And so the focus is, what are the priorities, like any triage system in a hospital, what's got to be done first. Now, having said that, and that's just the discipline of the mature people that we'll be having in there. Now, having said that, as we've spoken before, because of our 2% expenditure tax, we're going to have what is it? 300, $500 billion in the red,
Yeah.
in black. So there'll be more money to do what we've got to do. And that's the part that's going to shock everybody. How can Wagga get an upgrade to the base hospital out there, and Toowoomba gets the new swimming pool and oval that it needs? Because the money's there. You've been conned for years. It's been stolen from you. So there's a couple of parts. The politics, the discipline is still there. There is a plan. There is an infrastructure plan that's already been fought over, discussed, and prioritized. And it's as simple as that. And if a particular independent gets stitched up over and over again, he just walks out and says, "I'm no longer part of this team because my people constantly get nothing." Now, in the party system, he's got to take it, and his electorate gets nothing. And as I said,
Yeah.
Wagga under Berejiklian and the idiot local member down there, we're going to get an oval, but not an upgrade to the hospital, plus 10,000 more people. So I'm going to tell you, the
Yeah.
new system, yes, it's going to be lumpy. Yes, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to reflect the needs of the people more than it currently does. Because I can tell you, you'd look at the northern suburbs of Sydney, the Spit Bridge down there, the traffic's a shocker. Nobody is going to help them. Why? Because Labor's never going to help the blue bloods over there,
Nope.
and the Liberals won't
Nope.
do it because then they'll be beaten to death with a with a stick. And so
Yeah.
you've got groups all around the country that are disadvantaged by the party system. Well, all of a sudden, you won't have the party system. You'll have somebody that is genuinely breaking their back to get what you need. But that discipline, and when you see the A1 policies, you'll see that we've dived into every area, and there are different levels of granularity. But once we agree on this, man, it's not going to be as hard as it looks. It really isn't. And people will be shocked that the money is there. Yes, you can have your new school. Oh, and by the way, yes, you can have your new hospital. And yes, guess what? You can have a tunnel from the north side to the south side, so you can travel down the south coast without adding 2.5 hours to your trip because you have to go through the CBD. There's a million
Yeah.
ways around this, folks. And by the way, the concentration in the cities will decrease anyway, simply because we're going to make life in the country so bloody attractive that people are going to move out there rather than stay in the city. I remember doing a consulting job, and this is going back, good God, 20 odd years. I can't recall. 15, 20 years, something, I don't know. But I was assisting a consulting firm on a decentralisation program for New South Wales. And the solution is actually quite simple, because you've got Sydney, Newcastle, Wollongong. Sydney's being, banks who build infrastructure want to focus everybody in the city because they can milk more cows if they're all in the one paddock, so to speak. So the actual solution to overcrowding in Sydney, Newcastle, Wollongong is very, very simple. We came up with a very simple plan very quickly. We presented it to the government. Of course, like every other one of those plans, it got put on a shelf and ignored because the government had no interest in decentralising this concentration of people in the CBD of Sydney. Why? Because the property
Yeah.
developers are too fucking lazy to travel 10 k's to do a property development. It's all got to be within spitting distance of their daughter's school. Well, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, the plan is to decentralise. The plan is to get the country towns with the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the shops, the infrastructure, the work out there. And so people want to move out. It's good for kids. It's good for families. It's good for everybody. And watch the country. It'll be lumpy at first, as I said, but watch the country settle into this magnificent future that they could never imagine was possible.
I need to be a little bit careful because I think in our last chat we might have said a couple of things that upset the tube of Ubness, and they took me offline. So I will mention Project Matilda. Project Matilda tomorrow night. The plan is that I will be having a good chat tomorrow night with Patriot 101, and I'm sure, Riccardo, you're very familiar with his work. We're going to be talking about tunnels and dams, particularly related to Australia, and have some very interesting images that we'll be able to show.
Oh, brilliant.
That'll only happen on Project Matilda. So sort of recommend that people go over and join Project Matilda if you haven't already done so. We might still be having a technical hitch. I'll just point out at this stage, folks, we might still have a technical hitch, which might mean tomorrow night can't come off yet. But we are working very hard at this point to fix that, and the plan is to run as normal, as advertised, so to speak, at 7:30 tomorrow night. But if we're not on at 7:30 tomorrow night, it's because there is a technical issue. We are, within days, minutes, hours of fixing this. So hopefully everything will go to plan. But this week I hope to do two, if you like, Voice of Freedom uncensored shows just on Project Matilda. And the second one will be with somebody very close to Julian Assange. So I'm looking forward to being able to have that chat somewhere where we're not going to get banned either. Just on Julian Assange, without going into great depth, Riccardo, and getting me banned, where do you sit with Assange at the moment?
He's a national hero. And as soon as we're in a position to do it, we'll get him released and give him the Order of Australia. The guy is a national and global hero, without a shadow of a doubt.
I've had some questions since we talked about cloud seeding and whatnot. There has been a very concerning article being put out in the last week or so. I don't know if you've seen it, Riccardo, and I did have a copy of it somewhere and I forgot to upload it, so I do apologise. Melissa is asking the question, though, and as are many people asking this question, is there any truth to the fact they're spraying the jabby jab in a chemtrail in Queensland?
I've not heard that one specifically. I have heard it was admitted overseas in the last, I guess, 3-4 days. And forgive me, I can't remember the country, Spain, don't know. But they admitted that they were spraying toxins in the air, and it was in their mainstream media. And so,
Yep.
It wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me one bit.
No. We've got somebody here who for $2 wants to know about white hat and black hat and what QAnon crap is this. How do we explain Q? Well, QAnon's easy enough to explain. That's followers. But how do you go about explaining Q? And Q seems to have popped up into the popular vein of thought again. Even mainstream media seem to be mentioning Q a bit. Has that got much to do with what's going on in America at the moment, re the January 6th inquiry, for the want of a better term to give it?
Yeah, no, I don't know if it's January 6th is run. January 6th, for those who aren't aware of it, was the alleged act of sedition and assaulting the Houses of Congress, which it wasn't. It was a setup by the FBI. There's plenty of evidence of it. They've arrested people. One woman was killed, and they've arrested people for non-crimes, but then they're still in jail. It's an egregious breach of their rights as American citizens. I don't know if it has anything to do with that directly. If you want the history, what they talk about when they mean black hat, white hat. In the old days, in black and white TV, and Carl and I are old enough to remember black and white TV with a valve set that took about 35 seconds to warm up before you got a picture.
Yep.
Everything you saw on TV had to contrast, so you could actually, it made sense. I remember doing a Rice Bubbles ad when I was about 12, and the cornflakes for TV, and the cornflakes packet was in shades of black, white, and grey because it had to contrast on a black and white screen. And so everything had to be in black and white. So the cowboy films, the good guys always wore white hats. The black hats were always the bad guys. So you knew anybody wearing the black hat, it was a communication, a non-verbal communication to the audience. This is a bad guy. Now that expression, black hat, white hat, was co-opted to describe exactly that, who's on side and who's not. Now the Q movement kicked off decades and decades and decades ago, when it was understood, and if you read your new American history, which is nothing like you thought it was, they understood there were forces within the US that understood the bad things were happening. and the scope and scale of it. And we're only getting a taste of it now. And this movement, this Q movement, it's very real. It's not nonsense. It's not tinfoil hat wearing stuff. Extremely powerful forces are acting for good within the American machinery and have been for decades. And what we're only seeing
Yep.
now, it's not dissimilar, and in fact, in time frame as well. To be honest, you know what? It's just about the same. I remember hearing the story of a form of bamboo that grows 60 years underground, and then when it finally reaches, it doesn't reach the top, when it finally decides to break the surface because the roots just keep traveling laterally, and after 60 years, it'll pop up, and overnight you'll have a wall of bamboo, and that's what the Q movement is like. It's been working in a subterranean way for metaphorically and literally for 60 years, and now they're finally coming out into the light and taking out the black hats. That's the short version of it. The QAnons are the people that follow it. There's a lot of people that pretend to know what's going on, and they try to make hay and they try to get hits and views and thumbs up and likes and the rest of it. But the fact is, it's real, and thank God for it, because without it, Australia would be facing a 50, 100-year guerrilla war to take back our nation. So they're doing what they do. We do what we do. And to be honest, folks, if you're listening, we must be worthy of their efforts, because my God, what they are going through beggars description. It defies description. And so, folks, when I get a bit animated, it's because I hear stories like Carl does and a bunch of others of what's going on. And you can't be bothered to come to Canberra for a weekend. Seriously. I made a statement. I was asked to make a statement for Donald Trump's birthday. And it was very brief. And I said, we're aware of what the sacrifices you have made, are making, and will continue to make. And Australia has incurred a debt that we will never be able to pay, but it is one we will always remember. And those words didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people about a month and a half ago when I said them. But when the time comes and people realize what has been done, a lot of the loudmouths out there, best you to shut the fuck up and say thank you. Not to me, but to the people who are really working hard, risking all to save our miserable, ungrateful Australian lives.
Yeah. We've talked about apathy before. I think I probably called it laziness last week, and I want to apologise. It's not laziness; it's apathy. Australians are very good at waiting for somebody else to do something. If they don't have to do it, if somebody else will get up and do it, then we'll let them get up and do it. How do we change that mindset? What's it going to take? Is there a red pill to wake us from our apathy?
Yeah, there is a red pill, and it's coming. But beyond the red pill, the shock of what will be revealed, that'll be step one. But the step two, strangely enough, it's actually the first part of our end state. We must become a moral people again. And that's what I'm working on at the moment, this piece on a moral people and a sovereign people and a self-reliant people. We got to change as a people. Now, we used to be a moral people. And I'm not, this is not a religious moment. So, please grow up. You morons out there that cannot live with people of faith, just take a long walk off a short pier. Seriously, go away. I don't have time for imbeciles as stupid as you.
Sure.
Because 3/4 of the country believes in another faith. 20% aren't sure, and the rest of you are, the rabid lunatics that can't live with the fact that somebody else might have a separate idea. So I'm saying that quite intentionally. Get the fuck off this line and go away, because I'm not interested in wasting my time with imbeciles. We don't have time for morons like you. But we must become a moral people. And this is knowing right from wrong. But knowing right from wrong is not sufficient. Morality requires an act. It requires action. You must think what's got to be thought, say what's got to be said, and do what's got to be done. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're at home and you're in the back garden having a barbecue, and you see the next door neighbor and he drags his little girl and starts raping her. Now, you know that's wrong, but you do nothing. Are you a moral person? Just answer, not you, Carl, but this is for the listeners out there. Is it moral to sit by and watch a baby get raped and do nothing? Say nothing. That's Australia. You want more evidence of that? Here we go. The Chinese Communist, let's hit the Tesla drivers. Okay, here we go. Here's one for all you self-righteous Tesla drivers out there. the battery in your car, as well as the batteries required for rechargeable batteries required for iPads, iPhones, everything like that, requires an element called cobalt.
Yeah.
Now the highest concentration, the greatest reserves of cobalt in the world are in the Congo. They hold a little over 50% of the world's reserves of cobalt. It's run by the Chinese. The mines are, most of the mines are industrial strength, but there are about 35,000 individuals who work outside the mine system, but they mine some of the other areas and they sell it to the Chinese buying shops. 35,000 of these are children as young as 6. So, Mr. Tesla driver, with your air of superiority, you're driving a car that is killing 6-year-old children. Now, you didn't know that, and I'm not going to blame you for not knowing it, but shit, I never went past year 12, but I can read. I can ask questions, unlike that idiot Channel 7 news reporter whose primary skill seems to be reading a fucking, what's it called? An auto cue.
An auto cue.
Every Tesla driver out there, every iPhone user, every computer user, every one of you, you can't do a thing without cobalt, and you are enjoying a lifestyle based on the blood of 6-year-old African children. How do you feel now? Now that you know about it, what are you going to do? Oh, nothing. Because I need my Tesla, I need my phone, I'll just turn my head. You see what I mean? Australians are not moral. You will not turn your fucking phone off. You will not sell your Tesla. You won't even complain to your minister to say, we have to find an alternative source to cobalt out of the Congo. Now, here's something that'll make your eyes water. Guess who has the second largest reserves of cobalt on the planet? Australia.
Wow.
Wow, how about that? And now you Tesla fuckers, now that you know that, you'll keep driving your car. And every kilometer you drive, know that you're killing another fucking 6-year-old in the Congo because you're too fucking stupid and too fucking lazy and too fucking amoral. There's your problem, Carl. And it's not just Australia. I bet you not one of you fuckers, I'm not talking to you, Carl, you Tesla drivers will care one squat because it's easy. The solutions are there if you can fucking read. So we are not a moral people anymore because our comfort is too important to us, and we're not taking the hits. We're not sacrificing enough to save ourselves and our kids and the planet. But you'll cry when when the World Wildlife Fund shows you a leopard with its paw in a claw, but you won't say a thing about Amnesty International when they support full-term abortion, will you? But I'm just a simple soldier. Don't worry about me. I'm just a tinfoil hat wearing loon. So go back to your shitty little fucking amoral lives, people. Take the jab, wear the mask, and fucking die, because that's what's going to happen to you. Because you couldn't be bothered. And until we become a moral people again, Carl, this is where we're headed. This is a one-way ticket to hell. Now, once this red pill comes down and it gets shoved down the throats of too many Australians, and they go, oh my God, what did I do? Now we have to become moral again. We have to know right from wrong. The Chinese Communist Party, and let me just go one more and then I'll get off my rant, my high horse.
Yeah.
The CCP is not a sovereign government. It is a criminal cartel. We know that. Blind Freddy can see. But you know what? The Chinese Communist Party runs a capacity for transplanting organs, and you can book it. The rest of us have to just wait until somebody dies and might be a match and you get a heart or a lung or a liver. Not in China. You can book it. You get a blood test, send the details over. 2 weeks later, you've got your heart and lung or liver, whatever you need. You know why? Because the Falun Gong are literally anesthetized and the organs are harvested and they are killed. And we do business with the Chinese Communist Party. Are you kidding me? Does a moral people do that? Does a moral people actually say, oh, fuck it, don't worry about it? Then we've got the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs are the ethnically Chinese Muslims. And they also get organs harvested because there's a need for halal organs in the Middle East. So let's keep doing business with the Chinese Communist Party because we're a moral country. There's our problem, mate. We are no longer moral. We used to be, we're not anymore. And there are a bunch of other things that have happened.
Your girls are still a bit young. And admittedly, you homeschool the girls. I don't know how much screen time they get with phones or iPads, that sort of tablets, that sort of thing. Today, our teenagers are rude little bastards for the most part. Not all, but they are full of their own rights. They've been educated from kinder about what rights they have, not what expectations they should be trying to live up to. Are we, with what you're saying here, are we going to write off a generation, maybe
They're-
two?
I think they'll learn pretty quickly. They're going to learn pretty quickly. I'm a good teacher. I'm a hard teacher. I'm a fast teacher. Circumstances are the best teachers. We've got a lot of work to do very quickly. They won't have time to suck their thumbs. It'll be grow the fuck up. It'll be grow the fuck up. Because I've got to tell you, we've lost a generation or two already. We really do. They don't even know bad history.
Yep.
They don't even know bad history. There's one light on the horizon, and this is my son. He's a 22-year-old, and his generation are actually swinging more conservative than their predecessors because they're sick and tired of being blamed for everybody else's sins. And he says, "Fuck,
Yep.
I didn't do that, and I'm not doing that. This is not on me." You know, he's a good man. He'll take responsibility for his failings without a shadow of doubt. I've taught him that. Take it on the chin, take responsibility, and he does that. But I got to tell you,
Yep.
he and his mates are not keen to carry the can for somebody else's cock ups, and so they're actually trending more conservative. So you're right. There is a generation or two that are going to be shocked by the reality of life. But we got plans for this. And let me give you one how we can do it quite quickly in generational sense. And this is the approach that we take with all our policies. Instead of doing what these imbeciles in other parties do, you know, here's something for you, and 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 they're all at variance with each other. There's no coherent plan. Our defense policy is that we must be able to defend our nation and her interests independent of anybody. That's a big statement. Never been able to do that in our lives, but we're going to do it. The US used to have a policy of fighting two wars and still have a reserve for a third. And that's just a marker in the sand. Well, we're going to be able to defend our nation and her interests. Now, what people don't know is for decades, the Defence Force has been stripped of its capability, particularly in terms of its logistics and personnel. We've outsourced everything to everybody else because the alleged complaint from the moronic business people that don't know how armies work said that you're too top heavy and you've got 10 people at the back for every shooter you got up front. And that's pretty standard numbers, 10, 9, 8, 7, whatever it might be. So they said, let's outsource it. Now, what that does is it strips our capacity for our own logistics. We are now reliant upon private enterprise. And so when we were flying into Kuwait the first couple of times, we had to queue up to use the Antonov to fly our stuff out there because we didn't have any long-range heavy lift aircraft. We finally got a couple now, the C-17s. But we were just lining up and handing over our hard-earned, in a national sense, to the Antonov people so they could fly and pick up our stuff and drop it off. So what we're going to do is this. We want to defend our country by ourselves, no problem. We're going to rebuild our entire logistics and personnel capacity. Now, what does that mean? Instead of giving money to companies like Serco, which is, from what I can tell, just another criminal organization owned by one of the royal members of the royal family, instead of handing over our treasury to them, we use that same money that would have been spent. We will build up our butchers, our carpenters, our engineers, our logistics capacity, our transport, airlift, heavy airlift, medium air, road, rail, for the defense of the nation. Now, what's that going to do to a generation of kids when they leave school and they've got a chance to go join the army, get a trade, or go to university, up to them, and they spend 4 years in the system, they've got a trade, they've paid their time back, and they go back into Australia. Now, think about all these trade and university trained kids, disciplined, serve their nation, and we are now producing thousands and thousands of independent, strong-willed, capable men and women back into the community who can then physically build the nation. And all of a sudden, as I said, butchers, carpenters, engineers, mechanics, you name it, truck drivers, the lot. It's going to be a huge fucking bill. But guess what?
Yeah.
Instead of paying it to Serco and everybody else, we're actually killing two birds with one stone. We're getting the capability we need to build our nation, and we're building our young people up at the same time. As I said, this is not as hard as it sounds. It's only hard if you're a fucking idiot like moron Morrison or sleazy Albanese.
Yep.
It's only hard for them because they don't know what they're doing. As I said before,
Uh,
mate, I'm not a poly. I'm a soldier. We fix problems.
No, well, it sounds to me like you're getting ready to hand out the lyrics to Kumbaya.
Ah, watch this space. Watch this space. I can tell you, it's going to be a hoot. It is going to be a hoot. And I said, you
Uh,
know it. Once that tax
yeah,
policy comes in and people get 100% of their tax of their earnings in their hand, they're going
yep,
to feel guilty like they've robbed the bank.
yeah, yeah. And then they're going to wonder what they're going to spend it on because you won't have to. That'll be the beauty of it, but that's a whole other story. Just want to address a few things and comments that are going on in the chat. Folks, there are, I don't know, 1,700 people watching on one channel alone, and chat is getting a whole heap of messages from a whole heap of people, and it's rolling over faster than my eyes can. So if I am missing your questions, I'm working as hard as I can. There's no need to start yelling at me. Redneck Rumbler, you seem to be very, very keen to ask this question. So, Riccardo, your thoughts on Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall? I don't know if that means anything to you.
Yeah, the name rings a bell. Give me a clue. It does ring a bell. I don't know why.
Can't give you a clue. I've got no idea on it myself.
Sorry.
Apparently, have you heard about Gilmore Liberal requesting a recount in the vote in New South Wales?
I heard there are actually quite a few recounts required because the distribution of preferences was a bit dodgy. I saw a screenshot of a tweet that said how many seats. It was a silly number like 75. So that didn't ring true.
Right. Yep.
75 out of 151 seats is a little bit big, I think. But that's exactly what we should be pushing for. Absolutely.
Yep.
Good.
I've heard stories that there is a parliamentary inquiry, or at least a form of inquiry, due in August. Funny month, August. There's a lot of things due in August.
Let's hope.
And I
Touch
wonder
wood.
if we can get it all. Yeah, I wonder if we can get it all achieved in August. I wonder if there'll be anybody in Parliament in August to achieve anything. Now I forgot where the hell I was going with that because I was having so much fun with it. So I'll move on to the next question. What can you tell us about BlackRock?
BlackRock, it's one of the largest corporations on the planet, owns most of the things that own things.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
and
BlackRock is.
Vanguard own.
Yeah, correct.
Did you? Don't know if you saw it in Sydney, but recently up here in certainly my part of Queensland, we've been seeing Vanguard television commercials that don't actually advertise anything. It's more like we're here for you, you know. I got to wondering about that, working in the commercial industry as I have for quite a few years. I sort of wondered why you have a branding commercial like that playing that was pretty non-specific, a very generic kind of thing for a company that nobody really knows anything about and doesn't directly sell anything. It just owns everything. Got me wondering whether or not that was a sort of a transmission to well, not sleeper cells, but to those that might be associated with the likes of Vanguard and BlackRock, because I've never seen them advertise anywhere ever.
It's a bit like the Bilderberg Group putting out an advert, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a very strange little thing. I still shaking my head over that one. There was a question there about spraying over Queensland. We've already covered that one. Here's an interesting one. What are your thoughts on Queen Romana in Canada? And
Not a big
interesting
fan
that
of. Not a
Trudeau has
big
gone.
I'm not a big fan of royalty on the best of occasions, and who appointed you, why you appointed, and no royalty and royal families, forget it. And look, let me give you a really practical reason why, having lived and worked in kingdoms across the world, it does something to the people. It really does, because when you live and work in a kingdom, when the king says something, it just happens. It doesn't matter how insane it is. I mean, it's like the movies. It's true. I would like this. Poof. Short time later, 150 BMW M3s with the roof cut off and a pintle mount on the back with a 50 cal with no improved suspension, so it's sort of sitting on its tail like this. It just turns up in sand-colored camouflage, and we sit back and we watch it and go, yeah, okay, rightio, whatever. And the next
Yeah.
day, a warehouse of Russian machine guns and uh, AKs and RPKs and RPDs and RPGs all turn up, and we think, okay, good.
Yeah.
No logic to it, but here's what it does. When you have a supreme ruler whose word is law, there is no there's no check and balance. It just happens. Now, the net result of that is that people don't actually believe it or not, and I saw this in action. The concept of cause and effect evaporates from the national psyche. There is no cause and effect. If this happens, that'll be no, 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 no. If the king wants it, it'll happen. Otherwise, it won't. Quite literally. Now, I was helping out in one country. I was helping to develop some capability development processes, and I broke it down into quite simple formats. If you want a capability, here's comprises material and non-material parts. The material parts comprise this, the non-material parts comprise that. If you tick all these boxes, you will have a full capability. Make sense? Right. Anyway, so I took this up and I designed this system. And the colonel I gave it to took the paper and I briefed him. He was quite happy and away he went. A year later, we're at a meeting and long table, very ornate, gold everywhere. And I'm sitting down the back as one of the sort of whisperer advisors, I guess. And the colonel at the other end of the table saw me and he leapt to his feet, very excited, and he held a piece of paper I'd given him about a year ago and he went, "Logic, Rick, logic." And what it meant was it's seen the logic of it. If we do this is the logical conclusion of it. And there's a problem with royalty, and I mean it. Royal families can burn in hell for all I care. I mean it. It's the human
Yeah.
system, the brain, the bones, the muscles require effort to stay fit and strong. If you lift
Yeah.
weights, the additional weight on your legs makes the bone denser and stronger. It makes the muscle stronger. If you don't, same with the brain, same with your emotions, same with your brain, same with your psychology. It requires effort. Now, kingdoms remove that. There is no logical. It's just the king wants it, it turns up. Doesn't make sense, doesn't have to make sense. And eventually, over time, the people become imbeciles. So, there's a long
Uh,
answer. I know you didn't want to go down that path, but that's the problem with monarchies. That's why we must, every one of us, constantly
yep.
work hard at controlling and governing ourselves and our nation. That's the only guard against this ever happening again.
Absolutely. Rosanna's got an interesting statement there. I don't know how true that is. BlackRock may have just bought out Crown Casino in Melbourne. We are hearing stories today in the news in Queensland that Star Casino holdings here in Queensland and on the Gold Coast, Brisbane and the Gold Coast, are going to be investigated by the Queensland government under similar conditions as that were used in Sydney for the Star Casino down there. Melbourne has had its issues, and of course, James Packer got out of the casino business after a number of his staff in Macau were arrested and spent lengthy jail times. He was lucky enough to get out of the country, I think, before they got a hold of him or negotiated a deal on it. But he hasn't had a big appetite for casinos since that time. And Melbourne, I think, was the last one that he had shares in. So, and I think he stepped back from that a little while ago. So that could be a interesting story to keep an eye on in the future. I don't think there could be too much truth to it, though, Riccardo, because if we're to believe all the stories, the Black Hats have no money anymore. So buying a casino, you've got to think, would be a fairly extensive and expensive project, wouldn't it?
Oh, you'd think. Bit hard to spend money you haven't got anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so another question here from Yana. Uh, does Riccardo think the numbers we need to make up what's actually happening in this world will ever appear? So many people have no idea. Will the world wake up to us, Riccardo?
Yep, it will, but not because we'll get 80% of the country awake. We won't do that. We've just got to keep the fire burning. When
Yep,
the media wall comes down, that's when they will be told by their trusted voices what's been going on. It'll come out slower. My guess is it'll come out slower than we would like, but it has to come from the same media voices that are lying to them now.
yep,
When that happens, I think we've spoken about this before. I can imagine there'll still be something like 20% that just won't buy it, won't know, won't, and 20% won't care. Just get
Yeah.
on with it. Can I get back to paying my mortgage off, please?
There does seem to be a little bit more talk nowadays about those people who are going to wake up angry.
Yep.
A lot more open talk about those that are going to wake up angry and who are going to be very angry when they realise what they've fallen for.
Yeah.
Um, that has to be a concern, and we have to have some compassion and empathy for that. We can't just sit back and go, ha ha ha, we were right, because that's not what this whole thing is about, is it?
Well, that's the funny thing, and you're exactly right. The unvaxxed are the compassionate ones. We're the ones that are accommodating everybody else. It's only the vaxxed that want to, lock us up.
Yeah,
And when the truth does come out, it will be tragic for a lot of people. And no,
absolutely.
there'll be no I told you so's. Where we anticipate that'll be the major part of our job when we get into power, and that'll be facilitating two things: one, the recovery of the economy, which will then pay for everything else, but secondly, is to facilitate the return to good physical, mental, psychological health of the people that have just suffered physically, because there will be deaths, but then the
Yep.
psychological hit of finding out that most of what they believed was a lie. That's going to be tough, and it's going to take a lot of people a lot of time. And so, part of that transition will include, we anticipate, violence, but it won't be like in a terrorism sense, an active shooter scenario where you've got to go with an AK-47 running down the street shooting at everybody. We anticipate, although there might be the odd one of that, but it'll be more a case of focused violence against specific individuals, whether it's an angry dad taking out the doctor that killed his kids, for example.
Yep.
Very, very, very sporadic but focused violence. That's just prudent planning, anticipating that, trying to understand the scope and scale, potential scope and scale, and then making sure we have plans and ideas ready to go to help transition people from where they are to where they need to be. Once again, that's A1's job. It's this arc. The flood's coming. We're down in the valley hammering bits of wood together to make this big arc. People are standing on the hill saying, "Oh, big black clouds on the horizon. What are we going to do?" Well, come down and build the arc. The bigger the arc, the
Yep.
more we can carry with us
Yeah.
to help us. Yeah. So I think that's a. It won't be huge, but it'll happen.
I've got another question here. This one's from Daisy. Daisy, is it true that Australia is on the New York Stock Exchange and America owns Australia?
The short answer is yes.
Yeah, that is the short answer and probably the easiest one at this stage. But yeah, the short answer is yes. There is going to be a lot more on that, and it'll be made clearer, I suspect, in the not too distant future. Um, Let me just have a bit of a look here. I'll just get these last few questions out of the way. Some of them are statements. What do you know about the Reserve Bank and who owns them? From Mr. M&M.
The Reserve Bank is not like the Fed, thank goodness, in the US, which is a privately controlled bank. Having said that, um, our policy with the Reserve Bank is ensure that we control the supply of money and the value of money. So, as I've
Yeah,
said before, real money, sound money rather than fiat currency. So we're in a fortunate position, not like the Fed and not like the US. Having said that, we have had corrupted governments borrowing money from private banks, which has been completely unnecessary, and that's why we have much of the unnecessary debt that we have. Debt in and of itself is not necessarily a problem, because all large enterprises need more money than anybody has, whether it's a young couple wants to start a corner store or a nation wants to build major infrastructure. So
yeah,
debt is in and of itself is not a problem. It just depends to whom you owe the money under what terms and conditions. So we're going to make sure we never fall into that same hole that we've been
yeah.
falling into recently. In fact, if we do it right, we don't even have to borrow, because there are ways we can issue our own bonds. And as
Bonds, yep,
was done with the Commonwealth Bank back in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, where
yep,
they issued bonds and built infrastructure. The only infrastructure, one of the rails that always ran at a profit, and it cost the people nothing.
yeah,
And so there are models that we can we can borrow from our own experience, as I said, with the original Commonwealth Bank back 100 years ago, that paid for World War One, could have paid for World War One again if necessary. And I use that as an example of the calls on the cash that the bank had, or the financial capacity that the bank had.
Yep.
It did it without damaging loans, and so there are ways around it. Again, I'm sorry to make it sound like it's easy, but
There's nothing easy in this.
we've done it before. We've done it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of two questions in one here from two different people. Melissa's Freedom wants to know, how true is it that the UN will be taking over Australia to make our country their headquarters? I can tell you, Melissa, absolutely no truth in that at all, because every time they build a building, we'll burn the bastard down. You don't have to worry about that, probably with the people inside it. And then the Pinster has been hassling to have this question asked, amongst others. Are the UN in Australia already? I think that's a fairly stupid question, but yes, of course they're in Australia already. Do you have any further update on that, Riccardo?
No. No, you're exactly right. And it's a good question, because it's not like the UN. Like, for example, the UN vehicles are in Australia. The UN has no military vehicles. Just to give you an analogy, the
I have
UN.
that one right there.
Yep,
Why
there
UN
you go.
vehicles in Australia?
Okay. UN doesn't have vehicles. The Australian Army has vehicles. The Australian Defence Force has vehicles. The US military has vehicles. And when there's a UN operation, those countries then donate those vehicles for use. They paint them white and they send them off, and then they bring them back again. So if you see white vehicles, they're Australian vehicles that have been painted white on loan to the UN. So yes, they're UN vehicles, but they're actually our vehicles. Not like somebody's invaded us with their cars. What they do is they do it much simpler than that. They just ask for them and we hand them over. So
Yeah.
is the UN here in that sense? No, they're our vehicles that are earmarked for UN use. Having said that, is the UN here? Yes, they are. Of course they are, because they control us, because they control the crooked pollies. And there are, just like the Masonic filth, there's a gentleman in Southeast Asia that's the head man, and he controls Oz, and he's got his worker bees down here across the country. The UN's the same. But on the upside, and I raised this back during the Eden Monaro by-election when I got asked a question about where I sourced my information, and they said, the ABC gentleman said that he sourced his information from trusted organisations like the World Health Organization, and I said, you mean Dr. Tedros, the number 3 man in the terrorist Ethiopian communist government? And he got off the phone quite quickly. Now, I mentioned that, and that was 3 years ago when I mentioned that, over 3 years ago on radio. And now finally, mainstream media is mentioning Tedros in the same honeyed tones that I did, that the guy's just a terrorist. So it's starting to come out. So is the UN here? Yes. Do they have influence here? Yes. Is it going to evaporate? Yes.
In Brisbane, those holding yards where you might find those vehicles, I believe that those vehicles are constructed in Pinkenbar in Brisbane, and at the moment they're being constructed for a contract for Malaysia, where the UN are planning on deploying them. That's the story, at least, that we've been fed about the units in Pinkenbar in Brisbane. Let me just have a bit of a look here. I've only got a couple of these left. Did today's ASX crash in any way associated with the white hats? And is it leading to something more happening, say, in, gee, there it is again, August. Just keeps popping up. Have you bought a can of spaghetti to put in the fridge or put in the cupboard and keep for August this week?
Well, we had a few cans of spaghetti and stock and rice and pasta and you name it.
Pretty good.
I didn't hear about the crash today. Sorry, I had my head buried in my work, so I didn't even know there was a crash. Was it significant? Do you know, Carl?
3.5 points. When I saw it at about 11:30, that was just after the Open. It was big news then. I actually haven't seen what it wound up with. Let me just see if anybody's dropping it in at the bottom of the chat. If anybody knows that, how did it end up today? Oh, look, there you go. Brad's getting a bit brave. I'll put Brad's comment up.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to say anything. He's just... I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to do that. We'll leave it at that. can't see anybody telling me how badly the $90 billion wiped off the Australian stock market today, according to Tony. We'll take that as unconfirmed at this stage, but that's a fair bit to wipe off in one day, I would have thought.
Well, I mean, there are corrections coming. We know that. The depth and duration is the question.
Yes, true. I like Jace's question. Can we use the quarantine camps for the criminal government? I think it'd be a great multi-use tool.
It's a good thing you can't read my mind, because my mind immediately went to those gas tubes that connect all the cells, and I was thinking, is
Remember,
that an appropriate thing to say, Carl, or should I give myself 40 lashes with a
mate, we'll
filament?
only be on Project next week the way you're going. You're going to get me kicked clean off everything.
Oh,
That's all right, mate. It's all good. I'm not here to be a star on YouTube. I'm here to make sure people get informed about what's going on in the world. And well, if we get kicked off here, Project Matilda is where you'll find us, folks. The web address might change, the night and the time won't. So that's all you have to worry about. I'm just trying to bring up this second last one. How do I go about signing up to be a soldier when I only finished year 10 due to reading and writing disabilities? I would have thought the reserve would be the way to go. If you've had a bit more life.
You've got to have the military these days. In the old days, it was you're before the beak for a break and enter, and the beak said you got 12 months in jail or go join the army. Those days are gone. It's extremely technical profession now. You got to have your wits about you. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it. If you can read, write, you can do the job. Then look, get to school. Year 10 is not an issue, but make sure that you've got your wits about you. If you want the job, then work hard at it, mate. I had 24 glorious years. Best thing I ever did. Seriously, just brilliant, just brilliant. It was a great life. It really was. I saw and did the most amazing things that people have to go to the movies to experience, and I've done them. And there's I couldn't think of a better preparation for a young man or a young woman in that critical age between 18 and 22, where a lot can go off the rails.
Yeah.
So get your head into the books, read and write, get your academic skills up, because a lot of reading and writing in terms of your skill sets. And certainly if you want to get promotion, you've got to be able to read, write well. But you can do it.
Yep.
You can do it, mate. You look, a mate of mine, he ended up a major in the SAS. He came through the ranks as a private corporal, sergeant, warrant officer, and so on. Ended up a major, and I think he hid it from everybody, but he was dyslexic. And so it took him forever to write his operations orders out, but they were exquisitely done because he was so bloody careful. And so, look, work hard at it, mate. You'll do it. And look, let me tell you a little story about rules. I was just about to graduate as an officer, and I had a congenital problem with my back. It's called spondylolisthesis of L5 on S1, which means the two vertebrae are slightly out of alignment and puts pressure on the spine. And with the military training, just occasionally, I'd be in agony, but I never told anybody. And just before grad, I got called into the doctor's office, and he said, "Which corps are you graduating into?" And I said, "Infantry. I want to go to SAS." And he said, "Well, you've got this condition." I said, "I know, but I've came first in the cross country. I came first in this. I've done all these physical things." He said, "Yeah, no, we can let you graduate, but we can't let you graduate to infantry." And I said, "Well, that's the only thing I want to do." And he said, "Okay, well, how about you make a written commitment here?" And he was doing me a big favor. He was covering, his backside and the school's backside, but giving me an out. "If you commit to never carrying heavy loads, playing contact sport, or parachuting." And that's life in the infantry battalion. I mean, that's it in 3 words. Carrying heavy loads, playing rugby, and parachuting. So I said, "Yes, I promise I will never carry heavy loads, play rugby, or parachute." And what I did was, I had to strengthen my lower back to the extent where the muscles were so strong that it compensated for the structural weakness in the spine. And I knew I
Yeah,
took a
right.
risk. He said, "Look, there's a chance, mate, by the time you're 40, you'll have a 60-year-old back." And I stopped and I
Yep.
thought, worth it. I want a good life. As it is, here I am, 62, and I'm
Did.
still lifting 15 to 20 tons every couple of days down to the gym. Mate, a disability, forget it. Ignore it. Just read, write, get up to speed. You'll do well, mate. I can tell you, a
Push on.
man with a plan is unbeatable. Just do it.
I've got just two more questions for you. Melissa's Freedom wants to know, are us Queenslanders running out of electricity? It seems to be a strange thing at the moment. We're undergoing power problems, supply issues. Now, Queensland not known for its huge draw on power during winter or during summer with the air conditioners and the fridges and the freezers have to keep going. There has been a generator blow up in Queensland at the Callide plant, but that actually happened back in summer. Wouldn't have thought if we were going to have restrictions, summer would have been the time to have them. This sounds like a fairly strange little, well, to me at least, it raises questions, Riccardo, rolling power blackouts across the country.
Yeah, but it's almost like they're planning it, isn't it? They're planning the
Oh,
power blackouts. They're planning the food shortages. They're planning the supply chains problems. They're planning the oil problems. And somehow a war in Ukraine is making us pay more in oil. Go figure.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
all part of the plan. Do not be surprised. Just get cranky and start fighting back,
yeah.
guys.
And the final question I've got for tonight, because we've run about an hour, a bit over an hour and a half already. Have you ever been into a DUM, a deep underground military base?
No,
No. Did you ever know of their existence or have heard of anything like that through your career?
never heard to the detail that we're now getting it. Yes, I heard about it. In fact, first time I heard about these deep underground tunnels where they could accommodate cities. It was just extraordinary. It was back in, let me give you the year. Wait, 90, 98, 99, 2000, somewhere in there. I was talking to a business partner. I was still in the military, but I was doing business on the outside at the same time. And he'd just come back from the US and he'd had a guided tour of one of these things. And it was one of those, such an odd thing that he was describing that it stuck in my head. So yeah, no, this I've certainly heard about it, never seen one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think hopefully tomorrow night we might be able to shed a little bit more light on that with Patriot 101 on
Looking forward to it.
Project Matilda. Well, yeah, hopefully we're struggling with an interface with the streaming service at the moment because we do throw things up on different channels. So the code has been being written now for the last month or so. We tried it the other night to see if we could make it work, and it didn't quite work. So hopefully the plan was that it was going to be fixed this week and by today. So hopefully it'll be fixed tomorrow. But if it's not, folks, I'll put a message up here on the YouTube channel, provided they haven't blocked me after tonight's show, and let you know when and where. But if we do happen to disappear off YouTube, then go to Project Matilda. You'll find us there. Rick, once again, thank you very much for coming on tonight. We haven't acknowledged the Aussie Cossack as we normally do. The only update I have at the moment is that there is going to be a stand for the Cossack, stand for sentencing, we're going to call it, on the 30th of June. Any chance you'll be turning up at the courthouse in Burwood?
On the 30th, if I'm available, love to be there. If I'm available, we are flat out at the moment.
Yeah, so Rio's okay, is she? Everything's going well. She's going okay. I know she was sick a couple
Yeah,
of weeks ago.
yeah, no, she's getting back on her wheels, let's say. No, she's good. She's coming back quite well. Thanks for asking, mate.
You got a message for the folks before we let them go, mate? What would you lead them out with this week? What can each of them do this week to help forward the movement?
Good question. God, there's so much. It's funny you should ask because Rhiannon, my beautiful bride, was going back through some of our very early videos going back 2 years, and it was like I was talking yesterday. The message hasn't changed, saying the same things, what we've got to do and how we've got to do it, guys.
Yep, yep.
Stand
Just
up.
keep pushing them.
Just
Keep
keep,
trying
just
to wake.
keep. That's all we can do. As you said, the front line is between your ears. Use that
Yep.
brain. Think
Yep.
of ways to
Absolutely.
win the war. Win the people, win the people, win the people, whatever you do. Now, just to give you a little bit of encouragement there, the recognition I'm getting in the shops is increasing very quickly. Obviously, the election had something to do with it, but it's more a case of people are more comfortable coming up and saying hello, because previously I'd get that sort of that look from a distance and that sort of quiet nod. But now people are coming up, shaking hands and saying, "What do we do next? What's happening? What's going on?" So there are more of us out there that are willing to talk. So please, you've got a more receptive audience. Uh, Sign up to A1, become a member, get to work, build the army, build the ark, and get ready to save the country. That's the best you can do.
Is part of the is part of the membership, package, getting a hat or a badge or a T-shirt or something so that we can identify each other, Rick? I think that's gonna be an important part, to be able to see someone walking down the street and give them a nod and a smile, because
Yep.
you've got something in common with.
Oh, absolutely. But the supporter groups have been doing that since the beginning. What they do is they send up. A supporter group from Upper Kumbukta West will send a message to the state co-ward. State co-ward sends it up to us, and we okay it from the marketing perspective. And they'll say, "Look, we want to put together these flags and these t-shirts and hats. Do you agree?" And we just check the color and the branding is consistent. We say, "Yeah, go for it." And then the rule was at that stage, you can't sell it for a profit, but you can sell it at cost. This is sweat equity in the organization, and people love getting their hats and their t-shirts on it. And you're dead right. Get out there with your hats and t-shirts, but sign up. Come and sign up, guys. We're open for membership finally.
Maybe we need to, develop a Nothing But the Truth Tuesday, Bosi T-shirt or
There
mug.
you go. That'll work. That'll work. I'll send you a picture.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. All right, all the best to the family, mate. I hope you and the family have a great week and the girls learn something great, because they're gonna be at home. They're bound to learn something great, because if they go to
Oh, well,
school, they'll learn absolutely bl.
you can ask the 8-year-old for the formula for the volume of a cylinder, because she's very proudly wandering around the house talking about that. We did geometry last week, areas, formulas, three-dimensional objects, lots of fun.
Wonderful. Excellent stuff. All right. Well, once again, thank you very much for taking the time to join us again tonight, Riccardo. Like and subscribe, folks. The Aussie Cossack always was telling me, you got to keep saying that. I've forgotten to say it all night, but I've tried to have the sign up. Like and subscribe, and share with your friends, because the more people that come and join us, the more people get the opportunity to ask a question of Rick. The more people get to see what sort of a genuine bloke he is, and the people that part of A1 are just like Rick, aren't they? I mean, I had a wonderful night. I didn't mention it to you, Rick, but I went to the Freedom Fighters Ball on the Gold Coast on Saturday night as a guest of Lindsay Temple. Had an absolutely wonderful, wonderful evening. Lindsay, absolute gentleman of a man, and his lovely wife, Mary, looked after us just so well. And we were very grateful to get the invitation. But it was also so good to see so many other of the freedom fighters from Queensland there. And some of them got up, made speeches. There were a couple of senators there that got up and had their say. Jared Rennick and Malcolm Roberts both were there. It was a really good night, and such a great feeling in the room. Can't wait until we can prize you out of that freezing cold shithole in New South Wales and
Yeah.
bring you and Rihanna up here, because we would love to have you up here for one of those meet and greets, Rick. I hope that can
Oh, mate,
happen
I'd love to.
in the
And
not
you're
too
right.
distant.
You're right. The spirit's fantastic, and the A1 team's going through withdrawal symptoms because we had so much fun in Canberra, and then at the election, there's this camaraderie that was built. And the night of the election, as we were wrapping up, nobody wanted to leave. It was just so exciting. I mean, we hadn't won, but it didn't matter because everyone was so energized and so thrilled about having participated. So you're right. It's a bloody lovely feeling. If I can just throw one quick ad up, one more
Sure.
shot. Let's get that up there. Oh no, there we
There you
go.
go. We did
Well,
see that somebody's bought the book already. It turned up this week, and they said it was bloody wonderful, or
there you
is
go.
bloody wonderful. I figured reading it.
Well,
So,
it's going into its fourth print apparently. So please, ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's it's a great gift for the older ones who have got kids or grandkids. You want to give them a boost. The reason I had to write the book was because I couldn't find anything that covered what I needed to cover in terms of leadership. $30. And as I said, if you don't
Yeah.
like it, you can always use it as firewood.
You know, the last time I was plugging books, it was for L. Ron Hubbard. So just saying. A long time ago. Just saying.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not into Dianetics, so no, this is just pretty straightforward leadership. Give your kids and grandkids a boost.
Yeah, great. Excellent stuff. Riccardo Bosi, nothing but the truth on Tuesdays. Love your work. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.